I pulled into the driveway that Friday evening, looking forward to a well-earned break. After a long week on the tarmac, all I wanted was a quiet night with my wife, just the two of us. Our 3 kids had grown and moved out, and after 22 years of marriage, we finally had the time to enjoy ourselves again. Maybe dinner, maybe a movie, something simple, something nice. My name's Jack Carter. I've been an aircraft mechanic and crew chief for United Airlines for 25 years, working through every lousy shift imaginable. Now I was finally on a decent schedule. My wife, Laura, worked as a charge nurse in labor and delivery at Central Hospital. We made good money, enough to live comfortably. I pulled my pickup into the garage, parking in my usual spot. If we were going somewhere, it'd be in her luxury SUV. If we were in the mood for a country night, my F-250 would be our ride. Either way, I didn't care. If Laura was happy, I was happy. That's how marriage worked. Walking into the house, I sorted through the mail on the kitchen table when I heard movement upstairs. Then, quick footsteps on the stairs. Laura appeared in the doorway, wearing a short robe, the one that always made me stop and take notice. "Oh," she said, startled. "You're early. I wasn't expecting you for another hour." I glanced at my watch. Maybe I was a little ahead of schedule, but not by much. "What's the rush?" I asked. "Got plans?" She barely hesitated. "I'm going for a walk. Not sure what you're doing." Something felt off. My eyes flicked to the couch, where a small overnight bag sat neatly packed. "I have a date," she said casually, "with William Strathmore. It's set for the weekend. I'll be back Sunday night. We can talk then." I stared at her, stunned. Did she just say what I think she did? Before I could respond, she turned and hurried upstairs. A second later, I heard the door slam. "Damn you," I muttered under my breath. So much for my weekend. My first instinct, I needed backup. I wasn't going to let this turn into a he said, she said mess. So I pulled out my phone and dialed my daughter's number. "Hey, Dad, how's it going?" she answered, cheerful as ever. I grabbed Laura's purse and tossed it onto the coffee table. "I need you to get here, now. Your mom hit her head and she needs us." There was a brief pause before she blurted out, "I'm on my way, Dad," and hung up. Next, I called my eldest son. Same story, but with an extra instruction. "Call your brother and tell him to get here fast." "Dad, what the hell?" he muttered before ending the call. Finally, I dialed Laura's parents and gave them the same urgent message. Confusion erupted on their end before the call cut off. With that handled, I turned my attention to Laura's purse. The usual contents were there: credit cards, keys, along with a 12-pack of Trojan condoms. My stomach twisted. I'd had a vasectomy years ago. Then I saw the email confirmation. A room reservation at the Marriott in Kenilworth, rooms 733 through 710. Damn you to hell. And the name on the reservation. What? William Strathmore? I knew the guy, a pediatric surgeon at Laura's hospital. I'd met him at holiday parties over the years, and to put it mildly, the man was repulsive. The only redeeming thing about him was his wife. Drop-dead gorgeous, but she always seemed exhausted by his presence. I pocketed Laura's credit cards and car keys, then grabbed the email printout, evidence, just in case. Her phone was next. I unlocked it easily. Our anniversary date plus the number 3. A nod to our kids. Funny how she still clung to those sentimental details. She was still upstairs, oblivious. I scrolled through her contacts until I found the hospital's emergency list. There he was, the good doctor. His cell wouldn't help me, but his home phone would. I dialed. 2 rings. Then a voice. Soft, warm, expectant. "Oh, honey, I've been waiting for your call, but I don't recognize this number. Is everything okay?" "Mrs. Strathmore?" I asked. "Yes, who is this?" "This is Jack Carter. My wife is the head nurse at the hospital where your husband works." You might remember me? A pause, then recognition. Jack? Yes, of course. My husband and I were just talking about you and Laura the other night. I was actually waiting for William to call. So he's not home? No, he's in Boston for a surgical conference. Why? Her tone shifted. I exhaled. Look, Mrs. Strathmore, I don't know how to say this, but I think we're both being played. Laura just told me she's leaving for the weekend. She's booked a suite at the Marriott in Kenilworth. Checkout isn't until Monday morning. Silence. Then, what? What are you saying? I have the email confirmation, 7 adjoining rooms, booked under your husband's name. She inhaled sharply. I'm saving this number, Mr. Carter. Give me a moment to process this. I'll be in touch. I ended the call. Now all I had to do was wait. I was sick of this. Flipping through the hospital's emergency contact list, I found the number for Karina Adams, head of human resources. I knew her well. She and Laura were good friends. Her husband, Jerry, was a police sergeant. If anyone could help me, it was them. I dialed. She picked up almost immediately. Hello. Who is this? Karina, it's Jack Carter, Laura's husband. I heard a sharp intake of breath followed by a barely whispered, oh shit. Then, in a forced, overly casual tone, she said, Yes, Jack, what can I do for you? She sounded nervous, too nervous. I think there's something inappropriate going on between Dr. Strathmore and my wife. I want it looked into and I want it stopped. Silence. Then abruptly, I'm sorry, Jack. I can't talk right now. I have to go. Click. What the hell? That was weird. Almost instantly, Laura's cell phone rang. On the third ring, I answered. The panicked voice on the other end didn't even wait for a hello. Laura, he knows. He knows everything. What did you tell him? I smirked. Not everything, Karina, but I'm getting close. A sharp gasp, then dead air. I immediately looked up Karina's home number and dialed. 4 rings. Then a gruff male voice answered. Look, I don't want to renew my damn cable. I chuckled. Jerry, it sounds like you're having a bad day. There was a pause. Who is this? Jack Carter, Laura's husband. Oh, yeah, nothing but spam calls today. How are you, Jack? Is Karina home? Nope, I'm on babysitting duty. Karina's in Philly for a hospital team training this weekend. Why? I took a deep breath. Because I just found out your wife might be involved in something shady. I think there's more going on than just Laura and Strathmore. Silence. Then finally Jerry spoke. You thinking what I'm thinking? I don't know what I'm thinking, but I do know one thing. She's not walking out of this house tonight, even if I end up in jail. Jerry sighed. I'll let you know if I hear anything. Just don't do anything stupid. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. And then, just as I hung up, Laura appeared at the top of the stairs, dressed like an overpriced escort. Red silk slip dress, neckline plunging to her waist, thigh-high slit that left little to the imagination. She scanned the room, spotted her wallet on the coffee table, and scowled. What the hell, Jack? I have to leave and you threw all my stuff out? She stormed over, gathering her things. Oh, no, you don't, I snapped. You're not going anywhere. Sit down. She crossed her arms. You don't own me. I can do whatever I want. Is that a fact? I said, stepping closer. Well, so can I. Before she could react, I grabbed the front of her dress and yanked it down. In an instant, she stood there, nearly naked, wearing an open cup bra, a French lace garter belt, and smoky gray lace stockings with a seam running up the back. She shrieked, hands flying to cover herself. Jack, my dress! No, Laura, I growled, not your dress. I bought this for our 25th anniversary. Just like almost everything you're wearing right now. Her face burned red. If you're going out tonight, it won't be in this dress. At that moment, my phone rang. I answered, still staring at my humiliated wife. Jack Carter? A voice asked. I'm sorry to tell you, but you were right, Mary Strathmore said, her voice tight with controlled anger. I called the police and reported the car stolen. I bought it for him and it's registered in my name. They pulled him over about 5 minutes ago. He actually had the nerve to tell the cops he was my husband and that he had every right to drive it. She let out a dry, humorless chuckle. They called me from the scene, told me what he said. I heard him in the background, panting, claiming it was impossible that my husband was in Boston. The bastard was desperate, kept saying he needed a lawyer. I have to go deal with this mess. He was arrested and the car's impounded. There was a pause before she added, "Tell your wife I'll come get her next time." I put the phone on speaker, and as soon as the voice registered, Laura gasped and shrieked, "What have you done, Jack? Damn you!" Before I could respond, the front door burst open, and our 3 kids stormed inside. "Dad, what's going on?" Dave Jr. demanded, eyes darting between me and his mother, who was still half-dressed in her torn slip. "Mom, are you okay?" Haley, my daughter, rushed to her, concern written all over her face. "Your daddy tore it," Laura spat, pulling at the remains of her dress as if to cover herself. Every pair of eyes in the room snapped to me, accusations hovering in the air. I refused to flinch. "Michael," I said, locking eyes with my second son, "close the door." "What the hell is going on?" Michael asked, looking from me to his mother. "Mom, what did you do?" I folded my arms. "Why don't you tell them, Laura? Go ahead. Tell them why you had a 12-pack of Trojan condoms in your purse. You making water balloons or something?" Her face paled. I don't know where they came from. They're not mine," she stammered, barely above a whisper. "And where were you going? A weekend of wild fun with another man? No husband, no family, no responsibilities, just you, him, and a hotel room, right?" My voice dripped with disgust. Laura straightened her spine, chin lifting defiantly. "I can do what I want. It's my body." The words had barely left her mouth when realization struck. She had just said that in front of her children. A flicker of shame crossed her face, and in a much softer tone, she added, "Well, I can—" Dave Jr. scoffed, rolling his eyes before disappearing into the kitchen. A moment later, he reappeared holding an envelope. "Here, Dad, it's addressed to you." He shot his mother a look filled with pure contempt. Laura's eyes widened in horror. She shot up from the couch, the remains of her dress slipping further, leaving her more exposed. "Don't read that," she shrieked, lunging forward. Haley, mortified by her mother's state, rushed over, trying to help cover her up. "Sit down, Laura," I barked, and she froze, torn between fight and flight. I tore open the envelope and read the letter aloud. "My dear husband, my sister is taking care of my mother and she needs help. I am going to be with them this weekend and will be home Monday night. Kisses and hugs, Laura." The kids exchanged confused glances. I smirked coldly, the final piece of her deception clicking into place. She had written this before she knew I was onto her. Now her lies were unraveling faster than she could control. And then, as if fate itself was enjoying the spectacle, the doorbell rang. Michael opened it and in stormed Laura's parents. "Laura, are you okay?" her mother cried, eyes scanning the chaotic scene. Her father's face was already dark with fury. "What the hell is going on here?" And just like that, Laura's knees buckled and she fainted. I sighed, rubbing my temples. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Dad." "Welcome to the disaster zone," I muttered. "Your daughter just managed to destroy our marriage and possibly wreck her life and career while she was at it." Laura's mother and Haley were frantically trying to wake her up, fanning her face, shaking her shoulders. Her father stood rigid, silent, his jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. As I filled them in, the room grew colder with every word. When Laura finally stirred, she came to in a panic, eyes darting around in wild desperation. She turned to her mother, grabbing onto her like a lifeline. "Mom," she whimpered, "help me, please." "Do you need help?" Why don't you ask your sister to help? I said coldly, my patience gone. After all, you were supposed to be helping her with your mother. Maybe she can return the favor. With that, I handed the note to Laura's father, watching as his face darkened with every word he read. At the same time, I pulled out my phone and dialed Mavis, Laura's sister. The phone rang twice before she answered. "Hello, is this David?" she asked, her tone polite but wary. "Yes, Mavis, how are you? How's Mom? Is she okay?" "Oh, yes," Mavis replied cheerfully. "She's doing fine. Laura is helping me a lot. I don't know what I'd do without her." I exhaled sharply, biting back a bitter laugh. "Can I talk to her, please?" There was a brief hesitation before Mavis answered. "Oh, well, she's busy right now. Maybe she'll call you back in a little while." Before I could say anything, I heard a loud shuffle on the other end, followed by a sharp intake of breath. Then, Laura's mother snatched the phone from my hand and barked, "There's no need for that." Her voice dropped into an accusatory growl. "You lying little simian," she screamed, the word practically vibrating through the room. On the other end of the call, Mavis erupted into hysterical shrieks. "Don't you dare check my health again, Mavis," Laura snapped, her voice filled with raw panic. She lunged forward as if she could somehow snatch the phone out of thin air, but in her haste, she lost her footing and collapsed to the floor. There she was, sprawled out in front of our children and her parents, nearly naked, wearing nothing but the humiliating remnants of her lingerie. Haley gasped and turned away, shielding her eyes. Laura's father looked like he was about to have a stroke, his face an unnatural shade of red. Before anyone could react, my phone rang again. "Hello," I answered, exhaling heavily. "David, it's Jerry," came the grave voice of Laura's friend's husband. He sounded exactly the way I felt, drained, angry, done. "You were right. I got a warrant to search the 7 rooms at the Marriott. We searched under the missing persons warrant I filed under oath, and we found 12 other people, including my wife." His voice caught for a second before he continued. 3 male doctors, 4 female doctors, 4 nurses, and another HR specialist. They were all there. It was one giant fucking mess. "I'm sorry, Dave. I'm really sorry." I closed my eyes for a moment, absorbing the confirmation of what I already knew. "Me too, Jerry," I said quietly. "But it is what it is. Thanks." I turned to my soon-to-be ex-wife, my voice devoid of emotion, "Go upstairs, put on some decent clothes, and then get the hell out of my house." Laura slowly picked herself up, her movements sluggish, her dignity in tatters. She took one trembling step toward the stairs, then stopped, looking at me with wide, desperate eyes. "Please," she whispered, "please, don't leave me like this." I let out a humorless laugh. "Oh, you mean the way you abandoned our marriage? The way you stood here in front of our kids and declared it's my body, I can do what I want? You think I don't know what temptation is, Laura?" I shook my head, stepping closer, my voice dropping. I could have slept with that little waitress at the diner where we used to get coffee after my night shifts. I could have fucked the saleswoman at the Lincoln dealership where we bought the car. Hell, your own sister even hit on me. Laura let out a strangled gasp, her eyes going impossibly wide. "But I didn't," I continued, my voice hard. "Because I loved you, bitch. And this?" "This is how you repay me." She trembled, tears running down her face, but I felt nothing for her anymore. "Get out of my life," I finished coldly. "Now." She finally lost her temper, spun on her heel, and bolted upstairs, losing one of her high-heeled shoes on the way. The living room fell into an eerie silence, the weight of everything settling into the air like an oppressive fog. Then, my daughter, Haley, exhaled sharply and shook her head. "I'm gonna go make sure she doesn't do anything stupid, Daddy," she said quietly. Otherwise, I'll be disappointed in her for the rest of my life. With that, she turned and climbed the stairs, leaving the rest of us to stew in the aftermath. About 30 minutes later, Judith reappeared, suitcase in hand, dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt. Her hair was a tangled mess, her makeup smeared beyond repair. She looked like a ghost of the woman I once loved, hollow, lost. As she made her way toward the door, our oldest son, Dave Jr., stepped in her path. His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, something sharp and unforgiving. "Don't worry, Mom," he said. "Adrian and I will plan the wedding so it won't interfere with any of your celebrations. Not like you'll get an invitation anyway. Maybe Dad will bring a new girlfriend." Judith froze, her breath hitching, her fingers clenching the handle of her suitcase. Adrienne was Dave's longtime girlfriend, but we hadn't realized just how serious they were until now. Judith took a step back, her face crumbling, but before she could say anything, her mother gently ushered her out the door. Her father lingered, turning to me with a pained expression. "Is there any way to overcome all this?" he asked, his voice raw. "She clearly needs help, but nothing seems to be happening." "She can talk to my lawyer about it," I said, my voice devoid of warmth. He sighed heavily, rubbing his temple. "Remember, son, she loves you." I let out a bitter chuckle, meeting his gaze head on. Funny way of showing it. What was funny, though, was how every single one of them, the doctors, the nurses, the HR staff, acted the same way. Mature, agreeable, like they'd done nothing wrong until they got caught. Then the reality unraveled. It turned out that Dr. Strathmore had been using the hospital's corporate credit card to fund his escapades, renting rooms, covering booze and food for their weekend getaways. The hospital tried to avoid the fallout, but when it was discovered that all 8 of them had falsified records to appear as if they were either working or attending a seminar, the truth became impossible to contain. Marriages shattered, careers were torched, and while this wasn't the first time they'd pulled something like this, it would definitely be the last. I filed for divorce. But despite everything, despite the betrayal and the humiliation, I was, at my core, a mild-mannered airplane mechanic. God help me, I loved her. As they say in the movies, I loved her more than my baggage. So I let her stall. I let her see a counselor. The kids supported me, convinced that I was at least trying, but inside I was drowning in pain. How had I been so blindsided? United Airlines was sympathetic enough to grant me an extended medical leave, giving me time to process everything. Judith lost her job, along with everyone else involved. Strathmore was fired, sued, and prosecuted. Karina was out, along with her second in command. The hospital found itself in desperate need of doctors and nurses, but reputations were ruined. As for my wife, she had been the last recruit into their little sex ring. Fresh meat. They'd spotted her long ago, but it was Karina who worked on her, slowly pulling her in, convincing her that it was harmless, that it was fun, that I would never find out. And if I did, well, a lot of husbands liked when their wives fooled around with other men. It took 6 months, but they wore her down, and she gave in. A year passed. I still loved her, and I still couldn't live without her. The question haunted me. Would I be better off with her in my life or without her? I watched her like a hawk, bombarding her with questions, analyzing every word, every movement. It drove her crazy, but thanks to her therapist, her parents, and our children, she understood that I was doing the best I could. And she loved me for it. God help me, but I believed her. I sued the hospital and Dr. Strathmore. His wife had already cleaned him out in the divorce, but I was next in line, just ahead of the other victims. We bled him dry. As for the hospital, I settled out of court. A 6-figure sum for me and my kids. The other plaintiffs walked away with 7-figure payouts. Mavis, my sister-in-law, was unwelcome everywhere. I had no idea if her parents still spoke to her, and frankly, I didn't care. In the end, I was lucky. Lucky that I'd kept my wits about me. Lucky that my kids and friends had my back. Lucky that despite everything, I hadn't lost myself. I don't think I ever took my marriage for granted. But maybe, in some ways, I had. Never again. It's been over a year now, and somehow we're back. The sex, fucking amazing. Sometimes, in the quiet after, she sobs, clinging to me, whispering apologies for all the trauma she caused. And each time, it gets a little better. But don't think I'm a pushover. 8 months after the storm hit, I ran into Strathmore outside the gym. He looked like shit. Life had chewed him up and spit him out. And lucky for me, I just so happened to be in the company of a cop at the time. So life went on. I told him he better get used to working for a living. And if he ever wanted to fight, he better learn how to throw a punch first. Yeah, I know, it's corny. Ugh. Don't mess with my wife and I'll stay soft. This is Mary Strathmore.